Welcome to the Tactical Writing Academy. I'm Greg.
And I'm Mitch.
In this episode, we'll show you the power of the active voice.
But we're not talking about singing. We're talking about writing.
Specifically, writing in the active voice.
The active voice energizes your writing because it reads like a story. It's action-oriented, short, and clear.
Behold its power. It can transform this, "The castle was stormed by the king's army,"
into this, "The king's army stormed the castle."
Notice how the active voice tightened the writing, giving it punch. Here's another example. Greg stole Mitch's watch.
You what?
That sentence is plain language at its best, Mitch.
Sure it is, as long as you keep your hands off my watch.
Unfortunately, Mitch, many writers take a different approach by using the passive voice. It tells their readers what happened in this order. First, who or what receives the action, then the action itself, and finally, who or what took the action.
That's a recipe for turning something simple into something complex.
Here's that sentence in the passive voice. Mitch's watch was stolen by Greg.
You know you're not getting away with this.
Oh, yes, I will. You just wait and see.
Justice always prevails. And this new sentence is wordy, awkward, and bureaucratic. It also makes the reader work harder to figure out who did what.
But here's the worst feature of the passive voice. It can remove the person or thing that took the action. Consider this sentence.
Mitch's watch was stolen.
Who stole it? The police need to know. But now they won't because the passive voice can hide that crucial information. And that's how I'll get away with the crime.
No, you won't, because you just confessed on video.
Oh!
I'm calling the police.
Hang on, let's just finish the video first.
We do have our viewers to think about. Clearly, we have plenty of reasons to use the active voice and avoid the passive voice.
And how do you do it? To answer, let's get tactical. With Tactic 1, identifying the passive voice so you can fix it.
The passive voice gives itself away with 3 clues.
Clue 1 is the word order, which is the action receiver, the action, and then the action taker.
Wow, that is mixed up. And here's a perfect example. The application will be completed by each student. The word order is the action receiver, the application, then the action will be completed, and then the action taker, each student. That's a backwards way of explaining an action.
That's right. Now let's look at clue 2. The word by usually introduces the action taker. The application will be completed by each student. The word by introduces each student, and each student is the action taker.
Exactly. And finally, we have clue 3. The sentence has some form of the verb to be, followed by some form of another verb. The application will be completed. In this sentence, the form of the verb to be is will be, and then comes some form of another verb, which is completed.
Yes, we have the smoking gun evidence of a passive voice sentence.
Now we can fix it. With Tactic 2, change the voice from passive to active.
To fix it, follow a simple 3-step process. Step 1 is determine who or what did the action. That's the action taker. Place that at the beginning of the sentence. Each student.
Step 2 is write the verb in the correct tense and place it immediately after the action taker. In this example, the sentence talks about the future, so we must use the future tense by converting will be completed to will complete. Then, we place the verb immediately after the action taker. Each student will complete.
Finally, find the action receiver. In our example, it's an application. Place that immediately after the verb. Each student will complete an application. Let's look at the before and after sentences together. Before, an application will be completed by each student.
After, each student will complete an application. We can see that the active voice is clearer and easier to read. It's also more direct and conversational.
That's tighter writing. Now check out these examples of passive versus active voice sentences. They'll help you to find and fix the passive voice.
The company was sued by a nonprofit organization.
A nonprofit organization sued the company.
New policies were published by the executive board.
The executive board published new policies.
The eligibility requirements must be met by the applicant before the application deadline.
Applicants must meet the eligibility requirements before the application deadline.
Parking spaces must be reserved and paid for in advance.
You must reserve and pay for your parking space in advance. Notice how that passive voice sentence omits the action taker. You don't always get clue 2, which is the word by introducing the action taker. We use the word you because the sentence gives a command to a generic you.
We've been showing you how the passive voice is the enemy of tight writing. That's usually true, but it's not always the case.
Writing in the passive voice may at times be your only or best option. Just use it sparingly and know exactly why you're using it.
It's up to the writer to make that call. The next tactic will help you do just that. Tactic 3. Use the passive voice only if you have no alternative.
Here are some situations when it's okay to take a walk on the passive side. Sometimes you may not know who or what took the action, but you must report that the action happened.
A newspaper might report that a man was murdered on Main Street last night, because the police haven't yet identified the murderer.
You may need to be diplomatic and avoid naming who took the action, even as you write about what happened.
Because the first deadline was missed, we must extend the project's timeline. There, we didn't call anybody out.
In legal matters, you may wish to describe the action of a law in the passive voice.
If you fail to pay your property tax, a lien will be placed on your house. Explaining the mechanics of the lien process may be too cumbersome when you just want to make a simple point. Pay the tax. Speaking of legal matters, now's the time I call the cops, you watch thief.
That brings us to our final example. Greg stole Mitch's phone. That's the active voice at its finest, Mitchell.
I'll see you in court. In the meantime, here's our takeaway. Write in the active voice whenever you can.
Your writing will improve and become a breeze to read. Your readers will love you for it. They'll notice even if they've never heard of the concept of active voice before.
They'll just know the writing's good.
And tight. That's it for this episode.
Subscribe to our channel and share the videos with your friends and colleagues.
Stay tactical and keep your text tight.